I spent the entire night bent over my old sewing machine, stitching the wedding dress for my daughter with hands that had known years of sacrifice. The lamp beside me flickered softly while the world outside slept, and every thread I pulled carried a memory. Her first steps, her first school dress, all the times she hugged me and said I was the best mother in the world. My fingers were numb, but my heart was full. When dawn finally arrived, sunlight touched the dress gently, making it glow even without diamonds or designer labels. I wrapped it with trembling pride and walked to my daughter Zuri's home. She was dressed like an elegant city woman, surrounded by friends who laughed with polished voices. I felt proud until she looked at the dress. She scanned it for barely a second before a cold smirk settled on her lips. "This looks cheap, something a poor woman would wear." Her words fell like knives. The girls giggled. My throat closed. My eyes burned, but I forced myself to walk away silently, gathering my dignity piece by piece. The sun was warm outside, but I felt frozen inside. All I could think of was the love sewn into every stitch, now lying among garbage. But that humiliation didn't end my story. It awakened something inside me I never knew existed. I returned home with a heart that felt heavier than the dress she discarded. I sat in front of my sewing machine, the same one that had fed us, saved us, raised us. Its quiet presence usually comforted me, but that day it felt like it was mourning alongside me. I placed my hand on its metal frame, seeking strength, and instead found a strange calm settling inside my chest. Not sadness, something colder, clearer, a resolve born from hurt. Days passed. Zuri never called, not even a message, not even a whisper of regret. I later heard she bought a fancy designer gown imported from Paris. Perfect, she had told someone. Perfect, how easily she forgot the imperfect hands that held her up all her life. One afternoon, I walked to her house while she was away. My footsteps felt heavy, my breath uneven. Inside, everything smelled expensive. Fresh flowers, my chest tightened as I lifted it out. Despite the stains, despite the insult, it still carried pieces of me. My hope, my sacrifices, my silent prayers. As I hugged the gown to my chest, something inside me hardened and healed at the same time. That night, I spread the dress across my table. The sunset poured through the window, touching it with gold. Even broken, it was beautiful. And in that fading light, I made a decision. One that would change the wedding day forever. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't even feel tired. It was as if the pain inside me had turned into pure, sharp focus. I began to work on the ruined gown, not for Zuri, not for her approval, but for myself. Each stitch felt like reclaiming a piece of my dignity. I added delicate crystal flowers along the hem, restored the torn lace with vintage patterns, and strengthened every seam with threads that carried my memories. But I wasn't just repairing a dress. I was repairing me. Every embroidery thread felt like a whispered reminder of all the nights I kept going when life tried to break me. One stitch for every tear I hid, one new lace pattern for every sacrifice that was ignored. And with every hour that passed, the dress transformed. It was no longer the simple gown I had made. It became something powerful, something alive. A quiet rebellion wrapped in fabric. For the first time in years, I saw in the mirror not a tired mother, but a woman rising. The wedding day approached, and though I had not planned to attend, something inside me whispered that destiny wasn't done yet. Because this time, when I walked into that ballroom, I wouldn't arrive with shame. I would arrive with a truth that would shake every heart in the room. The morning of Zuri's wedding arrived beneath a sky the color of quiet sorrow. Soft gray, heavy, waiting. I put on my simplest cream-colored dress, the same one I wore to my mother's funeral. Not because I had nothing else, but because that dress reminded me of the strength I inherited from women who survived storms far worse than humiliation. I folded the restored gown carefully inside a white linen bag. It no longer felt like a mother's offering. It felt like a message, a truth wrapped in beauty, a truth Zuri needed to face. When I stepped into the grand Magnolia Ballroom, the air sparkled with music, laughter, and gold lights. The kind of place where the world pretends everything is perfect. I stood near the entrance, invisible, watching my daughter twirl in her Paris gown. Expensive, flawless, empty. She didn't notice me, not once. Guests passed, some offering polite smiles. Others thought I didn't let the pain swallow me. Something steadier kept me rooted. As the ceremony continued, I watched every detail. Zuri's forced laugh, the groom's proud smile, the shallow admiration from the guests. And beneath all the glitter, I sensed something else. Fragility. A house of glass, waiting for the right truth to crack it. And at midnight, that moment finally came. Because when the music softened and the crowd swayed, I stepped forward with the gown in my hands, and the entire ballroom fell silent. When I stepped toward the center of the ballroom, the music faltered as if even the instruments sensed a truth approaching. Conversations died mid-sentence. Glasses stopped clinking. A wave of stillness washed through the golden lights. Every eye turned toward me, and then Zuri saw me. Her smile snapped, her breath caught. She took a small step back, as if the sight of me holding that white linen bag threatened the flawless world she had built around herself. "What are you doing, Mom?" she whispered, her voice cracking beneath the weight of fear and embarrassment. I didn't answer her. I simply opened the linen bag with slow, deliberate movements. A soft gasp spread through the room when the gown emerged, glowing under the chandelier like a star risen from ashes. This was no longer the poor woman's dress she had thrown away. This was a masterpiece of pain, patience, and resurrection. I held it up gently. "This," I said, my voice calm, but unshakable, "is the dress you rejected, the one you tossed into the trash. I restored it, not to shame you, but to remind you of where you come from. The room froze. Even the bride's friends lowered their eyes. Zuri's legs gave out, and she fell to her knees in front of everyone, tears streaming down her face, not out of anger, but realization. The truth had found her. At last. But the night wasn't finished revealing secrets, and the next one would shake not only Zuri, but me too. The ballroom silence lingered long after Zuri's sobs began to fade. I stood there, holding the gown, feeling the weight of decades, pain, sacrifice, love stitched into every fiber. For the first time, Zuri truly looked at me, not as an inconvenience to hide, not as a shadow in her bright world, but as the mother who had bled for her future. "Mom, I'm sorry," she whispered, the words trembling out of her like a confession she had carried for years. I knelt beside her and touched her face gently. "Daughter, love doesn't disappear when it's forgotten. It only waits." But before the room could breathe again, someone stepped forward, a woman with expensive jewelry, eyes filled with something more complicated than judgment. The groom's mother. Her voice shook. "Afia, I know you don't remember me, but I remember you." A strange chill ran up my spine. "I once treated you with cruelty," she said, lowering her head. "I never apologized. And when I saw you tonight, standing here with such dignity, I realized how deeply I failed you." Her confession rippled through the crowd like a quiet earthquake. Zuri gasped softly, turning toward me. "Mom, what is she talking about?" My heart tightened. The past I had buried so long ago was clawing its way back to the surface. Because before that night ended, I would learn a truth about my past, my husband, and my daughter. One that would change all three of our lives forever.